you have to understand your corporation strategy. The first thing I came in and they said, where's your data strategy? My first question was, where's the corporate strategy? Because the data strategy is only enabler to the corporate strategy. And if you don't know what it is, you're going the wrong direction. Your ROI, your business value will all come out of that corporate vision.
Welcome to Data and AI Mastery, the podcast where we bring you cutting-edge insights, practical advice, and inspiring stories from the leaders shaping the future of data and AI across the globe. I'm your host, Raoul Gabriel Irma, founder of Cambridge Spark, the leader in transformational data and AI upskilling, career development, and progression. In each episode, I will be diving into real-world case studies of companies harnessing the power of AI to drive innovation, reduce costs, and create new business opportunities. So whether you're an aspiring data scientist, AI engineer, or seasoned executive, this show is designed to give you the tools and knowledge to stay ahead in a world where data is transforming every aspect of business. Stay ahead, stay inspired, stay masterful. Welcome to Data and AI Mastery. Hi, Cassandra. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Well, look, I'd love to, for the audience, it'd be really amazing to hear about your journey and understand what led you to become the CDO at Lloyd's.
So I don't have a typical linear career as some others may. I actually started out my career in wealth management. So I sold insurance and assets for a while. And then I moved into tech after doing my MBA. And the department that I was in doing oil and gas, which is quite interesting because when you're in the insurance world and the oil and gas world, there's a lot of similarities, big barriers to entry. You've got market share, not a lot of change apathy because you don't have the need to change. So there's a lot of similarities between the industries. And then I moved on in my career to doing big digital transformations across Europe. And then I somehow landed myself as the data lead for Blueprint 2, creating the core data record for the London market for the open market placement. And when I was there, Bob James, who is now the CEO of Velenetic, but he was the COO of Lloyd's at the time, asked me if I'd want to join. And I thought, well, why not?
Wow. That's a amazing journey. I love how you said non-linear. That's very, very data-driven way to put it. So it sounds like in your career has been very sort of business-focused. A lot of CDOs I've spoken to tend to come from more of a sort of technical background, sort of data architecture and so on. But it sounds like you've come at it from more of a business angle, which is fascinating because there's a lot of talk of, data needs to drive value. So I'd love to hear more about that part of your career. How is it like, to be a CDO, but we're more kind of like the business hat on?
Well, I think you get different ilks of CDOs, right? So some CDOs or heads of data still report into a CIO, and that's kind of the remit of function. But as you're seeing this importance of data, where it's no longer big data, this separate thing that sits on the side, but the realization that data is the lifeblood that actually feeds business. You see the CDO role and the profile of the CDO role change. So I was into the COO, I'm now into the CFO. So we're definitely, if you're driving and deriving business value, then you have to be sitting in the business deriving business value. And so my history being a little bit different, it makes you understand the importance of bringing your business stakeholder on the journey, right? Because they know the business. They know how to underwrite insurance. They know how to oversee reserving. If you ask me to look at an actuarial account, I probably my brain would explode. I can't do that. But I need to understand what their pain points are, where they're trying to go, and what the value they derive for the market is. And if you don't come at it from that perspective, as they say, you can have the best technology idea in the entire world. If you can't sell it, it's useless. So you have to have value, true business value attached to the front of anything that you do, not data for data or tech for tech, because what's the purpose? What's the point?
Can you help understand how do you go about, running projects that benefit the business? Is it a data project? Is it a business project? Where do they come from? How do you try and, please everyone in a way? How does that work?
All right, so my tagline is there's no such thing as a data project. They're all business projects.
That's a great tagline.
If it doesn't derive business value, there's no point in doing it.
Amen. Yeah.
So I've got a couple of different rules with things that go wrong are I want to spend 18 months to 2 years building data foundations and doing a large data migration. And then in 2 years, maybe we'll have things in place for you to start, you as the business start utilizing and move forward. Just wait 2 years. I might as well sign my pink slip, right? I'm out.
Fair enough.
It's about not reinventing the world. It's about incremental value and delivering incremental value that's driven on a strategic point. So if you have foundations to lay in place, don't build the foundations and then find the use cases. Build the foundations as you have the use cases. Right now, in anything, you need some sort of enterprise architecture, data architecture. You need to have that North Star that you're heading towards, that you're building on. But this is all part of regular agile methodology. It's been done. So don't do the big waterfall, a 2-year, then maybe you get to use it. Deliver value incrementally to your business. And then what happens is if you do a couple of small ones, then they might give you a 6-7 months. They've shown that you'll prove and you'll get, I'm like, I could do a little bit more. If you give me a little bit more time, right? I don't have to actually productionize something right away. Can I get 6 months? They'll be like, well, you gave us this other stuff, so we now trust that you're not going to be caught up in this long, arduous transformation program. And by the end of it, nothing's transformed. The technology's moved on, and now you're going to pick something else.
Yeah.
So, rule number 1, incremental value. So that's not quick fixes and technical debt. That's strategic incremental value. Promoting standards has been the biggest thing with the business, is trying to prove to them that going on standards and not being so bespoke and niche, that it's not necessary to be bespoke and niche, that standardization, not standardization like everybody has to operate in the same way. Data standards will actually really help them move forward. So try to get them to think in a different way. And we're about to launch a campaign through the market about standards. If we think of how we use standards every single day in our lives, right? So think about the plug for your Android, right? You can go to your friend's house. My phone's dying. Do you have a charger, right? Like we all have the plug for that. Did you know a tea kettle, the plug for a tea kettle that size is a standard size across the world, right? So there's these little standards that we expect every single day, but then you start talking about data standards and people are like, whoa. It's like, no, think about the standards that run our lives and have made our lives a lot easier in today. So that's the other one. And the other element is interoperability, right? It's building something so they can change their mind. They can be fast, they can be modular, they can move on, but everything just seamlessly works together. You don't have to translate it. You don't have to handhold it. So these are kind of the things that the C-suite really understand this. They embrace it. And when you explain it in that way, they're on board. They're ready to support you. They're always nervous, like, how are you going to get it done in a complex market? But they get why you're doing it.
Great. So I'd love to unpack this a little further. So when we speak about ROI, I guess, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing with the C-suite conversation? And also, what are you seeing that gets people excited?
So it depends on the business that you're in. Now, Lloyd's isn't a commercially driven business. So I've actually found the return on investment to be, you can do from different sides. It was much easier when I was in the commercial world, right? So it's direct impact to the P&L or it's growth on the top line. Much easier. here, because it's part regulatory, is how do you measure that? What is risk? What is not risk? Have you measured your risk? Do you have the right data to measure risk, right? So when we're talking ROI, it can be a little bit wishy-washy for me in this place. But what nails down P&L, no matter what organization you're impact to P&L, you can always point to that. That's really simple, but it works. And then for us at Lloyd's, it's about creating a better customer experience. So recently they did an NPS survey to understand where we sit in the quadrants. So that can be the return on investment is a much better NPS score. So there's business-facing things that you just have to understand strategically. You have to understand your corporation strategy. The first thing I came in and they said, where's your data strategy? My first question was, where's the corporate strategy? Because the data strategy is only enabler to the corporate strategy. And if you don't know what it is, you're going the wrong direction.
It's great guidance.
Your ROI, your business value will all come out of that corporate vision.
Yeah. Great. That's great guidance. So it sounds like, there's a mix of, you can't escape the P&L. That's kind of like, transferable across every organization. But then there's also kind of the risk picture and also the customer experience. That's kind of like three buckets. That's really helpful. You're super passionate about data and, definitely around the data standards and the data-driven culture. I'd love to hear from you. How do you think about data fluency and data literacy? I know that, in the community, there's kind of like two school of thoughts here, but I'd love to get your perspective about it. How important is it for the organization and, generally as a skill set in the industry?
So I think there should be only one school of thought where it's fundamental to anything that we do. Anybody else who says that is just wrong. And it's not an opinion,
Great.
it's a fact.
I'm with you.
Data literacy so what we've done in Lloyd's is, again, when you start talking about data, a lot of people shut off. They think it's technology. They think and data is not technology. But the data people know that. I'm like, well, no, it's not about the data people. The data people love it. The data people are literate. That's not, we need to get the business data literate. They need to understand the importance of data ownership, because the decisions that they make, they have to understand if they make a decision to share their data in one way or to translate in one way, with the impacts it has on other areas of the business. If they don't understand basic data ownership structures or who actually owns that, then all of a sudden when you try and pull it apart, there's no ownership. It's entangled someplace else. Their data is being used for something wrong. They can't actually change and move forward and innovate because there's three other people who are dedicated to the data that they do own. I call it squatting in someone's data. I'm like, well, you let squatters into your house. In the UK, you cannot kick those people out. I'm Canadian. We would just evict them. But you can't do that here.
That's a good analogy.
So when you start explaining, like, who are you giving access to, right? Like, and it's elements like that. When they start understanding it, then they understand the challenges they have when it comes to transformation, or the challenges they have when they do changes, or when they need to make decisions. So I think it's fundamental. So what we did was we created a data community of practice, more grassroots. This isn't C-suite. This is the people who use this data and who are using it to produce the value for their job. And we're like, fundamentally, you need to understand this, right? And so our AI practice is embedded into it. Our data governance practice is embedded into it. Our analytics practice is embedded into it. And it's having very fun sessions, but learning sessions across the entire business, like the entire corporation, not just data people, not just tech people, people who use it, to get them understanding more about data and the data terminology. And when I first started it, we kind of put it out like people had to come who were nominated. I've grown membership by 50%. Like, people are going, can we join your data community practice? I'm like, oh yes, no, everybody's allowed to come. Cool. This is a party for all. This is definitely, and so People will come. They want to learn. If you can explain it in a way that they understand, well, why wasn't I able to do that? I'm like, well, see these 3 principles? So like, so if I made that decision, I'm like, yeah, if you made that decision with that requirement, you wouldn't have this problem. And they go, okay, well, we won't make that mistake again. And people want to learn. They genuinely do. If you make it interesting, people want to learn.
Great.
So yeah, that's it. Data literacy, fundamental.
That sounds like a brilliant initiative, which I'd love to unpack a little further. What did it take to launch the initiative, and how do you ensure success? Because it sounds like it's worked out really well. There's a high uptake. It sounds like it's clearly a learning mindset at Lloyd's, which really helps, no doubt. So I'd love to hear a bit more about, what does it take to launch an initiative? Someone else wants to do something similar in another organization, and what are key factors to success in your eyes?
Okay, first, C-suite buy-in. So we did pitch it to C-suite. So they bought in, and therefore the people initially that we asked to be part of it, they say we're forced. They had a lot of data working within their day job, right? So we kind of selected that, and it was about 15% of the organization. So once you kind of get past that part, you get C-suite buy-in. 2, don't drag it, not a huge amount of time, right? So it has to be an acceptable amount of time that people can take out of their day job. Make it engaging. It's number 1. You will lose people if you just start going into data privacy and all of a sudden you have to make it engaging. You have to make it about them, and you have to show why it impacts their world. So that's bringing business use cases. And what we've done now, so we started out with like bigger sessions of kind of learning sessions. Then we had a hands-on, we had a hackathon. We have 15-minute updates. We then have courses kind of after, like particularly for the AI, like bring your use case, come sit down. We'll help you work through it with the tools that we have, because not everybody's AI literate. Like I fight with Copilot every single time I use it. I'm like, that's not what I asked you.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm with you.
And then my head of AI, he's like, you need to ask better questions. I'm like, I don't want to. I just want it to do what I want it to do.
Exactly.
So these are but the key is engaging, right? And it's not, I kind of gave the team a rule, no more than 10 minutes on each topic, right? And you've got to do something interactive on each topic. Think about when you're taking, you go to a show or you go to be entertained, right? What keeps you engaged? And at what point in time does your brain shut off? About 15 minutes into anything, my brain shuts off. So you got to either change the topic, or you got to you got to bring me back into the room, right? So it's just human psychology. And yeah, so now we're trying to flip it. So we have these 15 each, every 2 months, we have a 15-minute kind of stand-up, what's going on in data, et cetera. But now that we've had a year of learning, no one from my data team is allowed to do those sessions. It has to be someone from finance. It has to be someone from markets. It has to be someone from risk going, oh, well, remember when we learned in this session, this is how I implemented it. So now it's actually a community, right? I want them to start sharing amongst themselves that it takes on a life of its own, and it doesn't have to be driven by the life force of the energy from data, that it is truly a community.
Fantastic.
So those are some tips.
Those are great tips. So just to quickly play back, so C-suite buy-in, early adopters, impactful content, really interactive, and also the power of the community. Those are like really important components. Thank you. That's really, really interesting. So another question before we move to the quickfire round is, what were some of the, I guess, battle scars that you faced that you've learned from at Lloyd's, if any?
So Lloyd's, it's definitely the stakeholder management. No other place do you need to have so many stakeholders in and buying in, and it's a symptom of the ecosystem, right? So if you think we've got 100 plus syndicates, those are all owned by different companies who all have different objectives being forced in different ways. And all of a sudden you're the center in the middle trying to basically coordinate the experience, the oversight for a whole bunch of competing objectives.
Yep.
And therefore a lot more socialization needs to be done because it's not just one decision maker here, it's many decision makers. So it doesn't move as fast as I'm used to in the commercial environment. And again, commercial is also quite different, right? Lloyd's is a society. It is a nonprofit. Most people don't know that. Whereas in your commercial world, right, you don't hit your numbers. You don't hit your numbers, right? Like it's a real clear path of what you're supposed to do. Yep. So when you ask return on investment, that's why sometimes it's a harder question. It's a harder answer because it depends on who you talk to where return on investment is, right? But if you're at a commercially driven company, you know what the return on investment is, right? You know what you're driving for.
Yep.
So that's probably the hardest lesson has been patience, and it's not a bone I have. So it's been challenging.
Yeah. I can imagine. You and I are not very patient people, but it sounds like you've really navigated this kind of like different environment really well. And it's great to hear about, especially the excitement around the data practice. It sounds like there's some, the culture is very much focused on learning and delivering on the data agenda. So that sounds really nice.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of being at Lloyd's is it is the center, right? So it is amazing being part of something where you get to influence as much and your decisions do. And that's why you have to have so much more governance. It's because your decisions have such an impact on a wider ecosystem. It's not just your company. You are impacting so many companies. So it's a real privilege to kind of be in that position and being able to have that influence. And that's what I have to remember when I get impatient, is there is a rationale for the way it operates, and it's justifiable.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like high impact, but in exchange, there needs to be a bit more stakeholder management and governance around it. That makes sense. Great. So, Cassandra, let's move on to quick fire round questions. So, and I'm sure there's a few here, but what is a contrarian view you have in the industry?
I think there's a real battle between kind of centralization versus federation. So you talk to it's like, oh, you've got to centralize it. I'm much, I believe in the federated model, not in the wild, wild west. There's a big difference between anarchy and shadow versus federated. But I think the leaner I can make my data organization, but more influential and putting the power back into the business that's kind of, that's more beneficial for the corporation as a whole. But it has to be
really
structured in the right way.
Really interesting. Yeah, no, there's quite a lot of debate on this topic. So that's great to hear your perspective. My next question is, as a CDO and being a senior leader, how do you stay up to date yourself?
Oh, God. I'd like to say that I am. I walk into work, so I do a lot of books on tape. It's not books on tape. It's like audio. So that's one way. I generally keep up more with the political side. I read the FT like crazy. And then it is very much interacting with peers. So I've got a great community of chief data officers who would come, we meet, and kind of understanding what's going on in the world.
Great. And I have a feeling standards will be brought up on this one, but if you had a magic wand and there's one issue you could solve, what would that issue be?
Seamless data sharing across the market in a language in a data standard that everyone would understand.
Yeah, that sounds like one that's keeping you up at night. Great. So 3 super short questions, more on the personal level. Yeah. So what was your favorite subject at school?
Math.
Great. What's your favorite music genre?
Oh no, I listen to horrible music. It's like I grew up so I've got the Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, but we're really going deep. It's into like the old the R&B hip hop, like Belle Div DeVoe, Tony. You've got to be North American to really be feeling my vibe on like that era.
Thank you, Cassandra. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
All right, thank you very much.
I really love this episode with Cassandra. She's so passionate about data, but what I particularly like is that she's really bringing the business side to it and focusing on driving value. So data is not a technology concern, it's a business concern. And I think that's incredibly powerful, and more of us in the industry need to take this stance. So a couple of takeaways that stood out. One is the importance of stakeholder management and communication, and clearly having a sales background is really helpful. At the end of the day, you need to talk to people, you need to influence, you need them to understand the value of your work and adopt it. So sales. Everybody should learn more about sales. The second one is around C-suite buy-in and C-suite engagement in order to drive the data agenda, but in particular to really tie in the corporate strategy first, and then the data strategy really fits into it. So I thought that was a really good takeaway. I also like what Cassandra said around, there's no point signing up to a 2-year program. That's just too long, especially in a fast-paced environment. You should kind of break it down into sprints, taking an agile perspective and deliver incremental value if you want to keep earning the right to further investment. So it's a good takeaway. And finally, really love the data practice initiative she described at Lloyd's, how to introduce a data culture in the wider workforce. And again, that requires C-suite buy-in, that requires content that is interactive and impactful, and a community around it. So I think a lot of organizations today are looking at ways to foster data literacy and encourage a data culture. So those were really good takeaways on how to go about doing so. So thank you, everybody. Great episode, and see you on the next one. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Data and AI Mastery. If you found value in today's discussion, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an insight from the leaders driving the future of data and AI. And if you're a data and AI leader looking to upskill your workforce with the fundamental data and AI skills to transform your business, Cambridge Spark is here to guide you every step of the way. Be sure to reach out to us on LinkedIn or on our website, cambridgespark.com. Until then, be sure to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with data, and remember, mastery comes with continued learning and action. Until next time, stay ahead, stay inspired, and stay masterful.